We all know how expensive and sometimes those snazzy marketing campaigns don't work so well. And I want to get to that. You're getting ahead of my questions here. So the but I want to go back to so why bundle custody with technology? So there's so many firms that are just tech out there. There's so many custodians that are giving away their tech. Why did you come up with the idea to well, build great tech, which is obviously a great idea, but also bundle custody with it?
Yeah, so I think like this is one of these things where if I go back and sort of time and to give some props where I think some people were very innovative, maybe a little bit ahead of their time. But I remember my first RIA, I worked with TD Waterhouse as my custodian, pre TD Ameritrade, and largely because they're the only ones that would take me. Right, I didn't have a lot of assets under management. They were the only custodian that would even consider a sub $10 million advisor back then, and um, and so this was my first exposure to like the conversation when they bring you on and then they kind of introduce you to, I think they called it their affinity center or something like that, where they had this kind of section of the website with all of these other companies that you could kind of, use to do different things. And I remember our sales rep telling me like, well, one of the things you'll need to find is a portfolio management system or portfolio accounting system, right? To do things like fee billing. And I remember being like, why wouldn't you guys just build fee billing right into your platform? Like, it's so silly that I have to go buy some other software for this. And they kind of like, smiled and nodded and didn't really think much about my question. And then it was like, you might want to find some of them also have, performance reporting where you can aggregate, a client that has 5 households into one really nice performance report and you can put your brand on it. And I thought again, why don't you guys just do this, right? Like that seems so silly that I would have to go find another company to do this. And you can imagine this conversation kept going, right? It kept going on and on. Um, I ran into Folio Institutional maybe a couple years later, and they, I think if people weren't familiar with them back then, they had digital account opening and digital ACATs, and fee billing was integrated. They had model-based portfolios that traded fractional shares. Now, I will say it was quite expensive because they were charging asset-based pricing. This was way before commission-free trading. So if you're paying like 20 to 25 basis points for sort of this bundle, it definitely wasn't cheap, but all of the tech was there. And it was a different structure than a typical custodian, but it was there. You could do a lot of things. And I remember then going back to my TD Ameritrade folks and going, man, it'd be so cool if you guys just bought them, and that way I could kind of have like the best of both worlds. I wouldn't have to maybe pay like this, trust company oriented basis point pricing, could get a great brand, right? All this tech integrated. And obviously, whatever 15 years later, Goldman buys them. And so let's see what Goldman does with them. But, what happens is, again, all these things, if we really peel back the layers of the onion, there's a reason why they're not tightly integrated with most companies today. And a lot of it has to do with things that most advisors don't want to talk about, which are going to be things like soft dollars and the way that we, historically sort of were able to, at the custodial level, pay for all this software without having to develop it, but only for like your top really, really big customers. So if you're running a multi-billion-dollar firm, you probably got enough soft dollars directly paid to like your portfolio management system that it sort of felt like it was free, right? Like it felt like it was all kind of in one. Yeah, they were disconnected systems, but you weren't paying out of the box for it. Flip side of that, if you're that small advisor and you're paying $50 per year per account or $70 per year per account, or have a $10,000 or $20,000 minimum for the software, it's pretty painful, right? So what's weird is innovation generally happens from startups. Not always, but generally happens from startups. This also is the case with advisors, meaning like the actual RAs themselves. So I look at things and think, well, if we want to create innovation from the RIA channel, that means we have to build systems that a brand new startup advisor could jump into and have a really good chance at being successful at. We shouldn't build everything just to take care of the huge multi-billion-dollar firms, but that's what was happening, right? And it had been happening for a very, very long time. So when you think about why bundle the custody of the tech, I think, again, one is it's just overdue. I mean, I think every advisor's had that same conversation I had 15 plus years ago, where I was like, why wouldn't you just have fee billing? Like, you have all the accounts, you have the assets. Why couldn't I just like toggle a couple of buttons, and have the percentage of AUM fee or whatever my fee billing mechanism was? And again, on and on with these other elements of the platform. So everybody's had that like conversation. We all wish it was just integrated for the most part. And so it's overdue. And then the second part is, I think only when you integrate can you compress the cost structure, and you can also engineer sort of the actual, sort of custody experience. So things like, fractional share trading, I think is really critical. I'm so glad that Folio did it way back in the day. I certainly hope everyone eventually gets there. But these are things that will allow an advisor to give the same client with, $100 a portfolio that normally they would have to have, $500,000 for, because of the sort of fractional ability to deploy at scale your same model portfolios across a lot of client accounts. So these are things that are really, important to me, maybe not to everybody, but I do feel like if we want to have a lot of innovation in the space, I think it's important for consumers that they get access to more great advisors. We had to put these things together. I think keeping them separate creates way too much complexity and way too much cost, and that stifles innovation.